Hello, everyone. My name is Eli Leland. I'm CTO and co-founder at Voltaic, and I would like to welcome you to our February webinar, What to Consider When Selecting a Battery Testing Partner. We are joined today by an all-star panel, including John Copeland, CTO and co-founder from Energy Assurance. You might also hear me call him JC, as well as Scott Profit, VP of Sales and Marketing from Energy Assurance, and Tal Scholklopper, said that name a few times, CEO of Voltaic and my co-founder. After the webinar, we'll be opening up the event to an interactive Q&A, so please do submit your questions throughout the course of the webinar. And a few housekeeping notes. The audience will be muted for the duration of the webinar. If you should have any questions, please use the question module in the meeting app. And if you should have any technical difficulties, please reach us via the chat module and we will work to help you resolve them as quickly as possible. So to help tee up today's conversation, I'm going to turn it over briefly to Tal to walk through some introductory material. Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Eli, and thank you, Scott and JC, for joining us. I wanted to quickly introduce Voltaic. Eli and I actually started the company in 2012, 11 years ago at this stage, really solving the pain point that we had running teams that were developing the next generation of energy storage technologies. Basically, our teams were trying to develop these next generation systems. They were generating a tremendous amount of data, trying to understand them and try to identify all the key bottlenecks to commercializing them, and very quickly realized that we needed software to help us really understand that data at scale and make decisions quickly. And so we started what we call an enterprise battery intelligence software company. And so that is a solution that allows you to automatically integrate with the underlying data that makes up these batteries. And so that's the materials that goes into them. It's the processing variables. It's the in-field operations and performance, the testing. And all of that data is really key to making decisions on how to get these products to market quickly, how to de-risk them, and how to make sure they're going to last as long as possible in the field. And so the key here is that you need actually battery-specific understanding built into this platform so that you could natively ingest the raw data formats, but also be able to really dive in and understand the electrochemistry within it. And we've been lucky enough to build up an amazing customer base. These are all software as a service subscribers, just a handful of our customers as examples, but everything from large tech giants like Google and Amazon to the transportation segments, and as well as people generating all the next generation materials and technologies and leading test houses like Energy Assurance. And so really to highlight why you need something like Voltaic, there's a whole range of automation that's been built within the industry to do standard reporting, make sure things are within pass-fail qualifications. But anytime you want to do deeper analysis across lots of data, or if you want to dig into the root cause of a problem, you're doing it very reactively and slowly. That's still sometimes back to flash drives, which is real in the industry. There's a lot of Excel. There's a lot of cobbled together, Python and MATLAB scripting. It just takes a long time to actually dig into all this stuff. And so it leads to a very, stage gate type of process where people aren't looking at the data very regularly and only figuring out there's issues around those stage gates or reactively if something's wrong when they dig in. And so that's just not fast enough given the timelines that our customers need to get products out to market. Everyone's under immense pressure to launch that next battery chemistry, hit that next performance target, get that vehicle on the road. And so what we've done is develop a system that could automatically ingest battery data from wherever it's being generated. We have native integration with all the major test equipment vendors, the system integrators above that, the production lines. We can tie into the MESs, formation, et cetera, all the way through in-field, telematics or energy management systems. We automatically bring that into a centralized platform, and we don't just leave it there. A lot of people think they solve this problem once they put it into a data lake or put it in the cloud. The reality is it's still really hard to find the data. There's no real labeling or understanding of what that data is. And so those end up becoming data swamps. And so what we do is a three-step process to actually make that data usable. We will automatically label it and organize it, creating traceability. We will harmonize that data into a common language. So independent if it came from your test lab, Energy Assurance's test lab, or a supplier in China, you could have it all in the same language. And then from there, we will automatically extract a whole range of battery-specific insight over 100 different metrics for every charge and discharge. And on top of that, we have solutions that end users can go in and very quickly dive into this data anywhere around the globe. And really what we see is this tremendous, improvement in the workflows where people, instead of looking at the data, at each of those stage gates, are diving in on a regular basis, multiple times a day, comparing lots more devices, really diving into understanding these battery systems at scale. And so with that, I was actually going to pass it over to, I think Scott is going to give a quick introduction to energy assurance.
Actually, JC, if you're the
JC,
founder of the company, why don't you start?
I've got it. I got it. Thanks, Tal. Appreciate it. So yes, I'm JC Copeland, CTO and co-founder for Energy Assurance. We are very much a niche lab. We're a fully accredited cell and battery test lab. We tell people we test cells and batteries. That's all we do. So we focus in on that. Our lab holds multiple accreditations with multiple ARC providers. We offer services in the world of regulatory and also in the space of production testing and failure analysis. Been around since 2009, so we're a little over a decade now. Here in 2022, we actually got acquired, so we're now a part of the Element Materials Technology family of laboratories. Next slide, please. Yeah.
I'll add to this because you're a little bit humble. Yeah, we've been in business for about 10 years, but the founder of the company, JC, and one of his colleagues come from 30 plus years of experience in battery testing. So specific to this industry, there's close to a century of effort just in the founders. But yeah, some of the problems we solve, as JC mentioned, the disciplines of testing we work in are regulatory and failure analysis. Those solve the problems kind of listed up here. I won't read all of them, but there's a lot of things with the investment that it takes to put in a full battery laboratory, whether it's in-house at a manufacturer, for example, one of our customers or our contemporaries, data management issues that you see there listed, unrealistic time to market, any of the things that we can help as a partner to solve the problems of our customers. Next slide. And I think I'll go a little bit deeper into what we do. So it might, again, give some and lend some credence to the conversation moving forward from here. So the performance testing, I'd say the lion's share of our customers there are battery integrators, not necessarily the manufacturers of batteries, but a consumer electronic company, for example, that's going to integrate a battery into their product, and that product is going to, its quality is going to be dependent on, in a great part, the battery that's within it. So we do a lot of cycle testing, calendar life testing. If they're going to trust their brand to a battery, they're going to want to put it through its paces, really. In this, I also include abuse testing, everything from environmental abuse, mechanical abuse, electrical abuses. That's thermals, humidity, vibration, drop, impact, shock, way down to short circuit, force discharge, overcharge. Very popular tests these days are nail penetration and thermal runaway, also things that we do. On the safety and regulatory side, moving to that second discipline of testing, we get involved. Here, the lion's share of our customers are the manufacturers of cells, packs, modules, what have you. And here we're doing the approvals necessary to remove the barriers to market. Those markets might be domestic, they might be global. Basically, any country you want to put a battery on the market, you might have the NRTL approvals necessary, like UL, SGS, TUV, IEC approvals, or industry approvals such as MIL standard or automotive standards or aerospace standards, for example. And then finally, that failure analysis piece is where we're either doing some efforts on quality inspections as the product is yet to hit the market, cell teardowns, CT scans, X-ray analysis, or we might be looking at it from a return from the field perspective, possibly even with expert witness and litigation experience under our belt. Looking at evidence and shrapnel and charcoal and finding out what happened here. So there's kind of a little bit of a definition of those disciplines of testing that we do. Next slide.
think that was it. So let's open up to the larger discussion here.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, excited for the dialogue. So, JC and Scott, you touched on it on that last slide, but can you go into a little bit more detail as to the types of battery testing that external test vendors provide, and a little more on sort of what the driving business case is for each type of testing? And it would also be interesting to hear a little bit more detail about what each type of testing entails.
Sure. So we tend to operate with our customers in a couple of different ways. Sometimes it's a case of overflow testing. Perhaps one of our clients doesn't have enough capacity. Could be a startup. They're not really wanting to go invest in test equipment and expertise in testing. They want to focus on what they're good at, whatever their intellectual background is there. So we offer the ability for them to essentially have a third-party lab that is focused on testing, knows all about it, brings that expertise to the party, and allows them again to stay focused on what they do. Scott, maybe vendor oversight might be a good discussion.
I had a couple of questions. Yeah, a couple of details. I think that I call it vendor oversight testing, where maybe one of our customers would want to do some benchmark testing. Maybe they did some evaluation of a product, a battery product 5 years ago, and they're still receiving shipments from that vendor. You got to do some oversight testing, or is it gonna be cost reduced and not be made aware? So make sure that you're still getting the quality product in that you thought you were. I call that vendor oversight. I also think that from a regulatory perspective, you might be getting product from a vendor that's from a region that might not be trustworthy. Is it legitimate, or is it potentially a counterfeit product? So we might do validation testing. Regulatory approval may already be on the battery, but was it done correctly? Was it done at all? So we might redo some regulatory efforts that have already been accomplished just to protect, again, that brand of our customer.
Interesting. I'm wondering if are there any anecdotes you can share, anonymously, of course, as to things that you discovered during, X-ray CT teardowns that perhaps your customer didn't expect, but you helped them become aware of in the vendors that they were working with?
We have seen, quite honestly, we've seen some scary things come through our lab, just downright scary. I've seen fairly large packs that were come in that were wired incorrectly. Clearly they were hand built, but these were actually going to be sold as production samples. These were not prototypes or anything. The entire safety circuit inside the battery was bypassed, meaning that battery had absolutely no protection at all. We're talking about a lithium-ion battery that is has flammable electrolyte in it and can go into thermal runaway if treated improperly. And so, yeah, no protections whatsoever. Scary.
I have seen safety agency approval marks come from certain regions of the world where a 2 or 3 letter logo of the safety agency was misspelled and not laid out correctly as the logo might be. A 2-letter logo misspelled is concerning.
Indeed, yes, I think that really can highlight how for organizations that perhaps don't have a tremendous amount of battery expertise in-house, working with an outside expert organization can really help keep your eye on the ball in terms of safety.
Hey, Eli, one more
yes,
thing on top of that,
please.
though, just to dovetail off of it. The counterfeiters are getting better. I mean, they truly are. In the old days, Scott's spot on. You could look for the misspellings on labels. Nowadays, they're getting better. They're technically getting better. It's harder to detect. We actually maintain a library of authentic samples so that we can do comparison testing. It's absolutely needed. A lot of times you cannot tell from the outside.
Fascinating.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting also to dive into the continuous quality checks. A lot of people, think you qualify a battery once and it's set it and forget it, but especially now with the supply chains really evolving, it seems like there's just a continuous iteration of like, our separator company can't get us new supply, so we'll just swap in this other one, or our cathode provider. Just those small changes that the manufacturers think they can get away with without doing a major rev and new qualification. Just interested if you guys could talk to that as well.
I'm going to say I like your use of the word evolving. By evolving, what he's truly referring to is that a lot of times now the automotive industry, just because it's this huge suck on cells, I mean, all of the top quality cells seem to go into the automotive industry. Everybody else is on allocation. So what that really means in practical terms, if you're building products, particularly say in the consumer space, you're having to talk to cell suppliers that perhaps you wouldn't have given the time of day 5+ years ago. And that means greater risk for you. And sometimes those changes that they make, they may believe perhaps legitimately are innocuous, but when you start stacking up a whole bunch of changes, all of a sudden it's not so innocuous. And so that approval that they did or the testing that was done, 3, 4, 5 years ago, actually may no longer represent how that cell or battery behaves.
It might not be an investigation that you just do an evaluation or even a cell teardown and be able to find, oh yes, here's the difference. It may take some cycling. It may take, let's look at what this data looks like over time, and does that correlate with data we have from, for example, 5 years ago, or are we seeing a big difference over time where you might not be able to see the difference in your hand?
Includes both safety and performance aspects.
Yeah, just a small anecdote, just a couple of them. So one is, wearable customer of ours. They had, their cells qualified, everything was looking good, and all of a sudden 6 months later, they started getting a whole bunch of warranty returns, and just a minor tweak in production, just could have very substantial consequences. And it's often hard to catch these things at the end of line and really know on the cell supplier side. It requires some of that aging qualification testing. And if the supplier's not doing it themselves, you want to have a program in place, maybe once a quarter or once a year, whatever makes sense for your business, to check that out. And just another change, there was one of our automotive customers similarly had, they were getting closer, moving beyond the A samples to the B samples for their vehicles, and slight change in cathode supplier, and all of a sudden, performance fell off a cliff, and just took them about 9 months to figure out what was happening with the supplier. And it's an arduous process. You want to catch it as soon as possible, these changes.
I think that segues pretty good into the actual main theme of this webinar is, what are you looking for in a partner in a test lab? And Tal, what you just brought up, being able to do that in-house, but maybe going out of house in some occasions. And we might speak a little bit about correlation of in-house capabilities to an occasional correlation of out-of-house testing capabilities that increase value of your in-house investments by that correlation with the lab that's all they do. As JC started saying, battery testing is what we do, and it's all we do. Our customers build devices. They might build cell phones or wearables or something like that, but they have to deal with battery testing also. All we do is battery testing. So that's one of the themes of creating choosing a good partner in a battery test lab.
I think that's a good. Go ahead, Tal.
I was going to say, from my side, just from the outside looking in, one of the key benefits of working with Energy Assurance is JC and Cindy, just their range of expertise in the space. And it's not just signing up and doing this test. They could actually help you figure out how to run it. What exactly is that matrix you want to run for the experiments? They're knee deep in the regulatory side and understand what's needed. They're not going to drive you in the wrong direction. That's especially as the space is growing quickly and people are electrifying more products. We're unfortunately seeing a lot of folks, trying to do well, but they don't know the space. They don't know what they're looking at, sort of a blind leading the blind situation. And just choosing the right partners, you could, really streamline things, just get there a whole lot faster and cheaper. JC, sorry, I cut you off.
All good. You covered it.
So awesome. So just in keeping with the theme of today's webinar, how to, what to consider when selecting a battery test partner, I'd like to kind of walk a little bit through the buyer's journey or the customer's journey for an organization that's seeking this type of support. So when should an organization start thinking about working with an external battery test partner, and what are the signs that that would be a key unlock for an organization?
I'll speak to that just in general. I think in general, when you should start seeking a partner in a battery test lab is when you enter the battery industry, day one. That's a macro answer. A micro answer is as you're in product development and you're starting to have prototype available, you're going to want that tested. If you don't have an in-house facility, start doing some prototype testing as early as possible while they're still trying to make any changes, while there's still time to adjust in quality of manufacturing. Last thing we want to do is the first time we see a product is 3 days before its intended release.
I'm going to go a little further with that as well. There's a business relationship, and there's sort of the intangibles there. If you want to make sure you pick the right partner, well, how do you know if you pick the right partner? If you haven't dealt with them before, you haven't actually done any work with them, that might be a hole there. The other kind of a practical piece is that as you're setting up this business relationship, there are things that have to be done. You have to get integrated into the lab system. The lab has to get integrated into your purchasing system. Perhaps your quality team may want to come and do an on-site audit or a desktop audit, review our accreditation, see that we actually know what we're doing. Those all take time. And so you don't want to find yourself in a pinch where something has occurred, you found a problem, you don't have the capacity or capability or whatever inside, and you need an outside partner. You want to have that lined up before you get into that situation.
Interesting.
We mentioned the word trust. I think you got to go back to trust. Who is the lab? How long have they been in business? What is the expertise there? What's their experience? And then I think a huge thing that adds a lot of weight is what's the reputation? What are people in the industry saying? Who else uses them and what was their experience? We have a very small industry, so a lot of our customers know each other. I think that word of mouth is probably one of the most guiding attributes to picking a good partnership lab.
Excellent. And it's from the perspective of the customer organization, what would you advise are the things that they should understand about their own needs as they embark on evaluating potential battery test partners?
Your limits.
What are the key pieces of information they can come to you with that would help identify whether it's the right match?
Have some idea what you need done, certainly. I kind of look at it as a business is going to make a decision about these are the things that we feel are critical that we need to keep inside. And these are the things that perhaps we don't want to focus on, that we want to outsource. Most organizations don't have particularly small ones, don't have their own lawyers and accountants. That's a service, to the professional service they outsource. It's kind of the same with the external testing world. You just want to make sure you're matching up what your needs are to what their expertise are.
Tal, to JC's point, do you have any observations as to what kinds of things companies tend to like to keep in-house versus outsource?
Yeah, so a lot of it is just really going back to that overflow capability and just some of the equipment and facilities they don't necessarily want to put in place themselves. So a lot of the failure analysis and nail penetrations and things like that, you don't necessarily, depending on where your facility is, you don't want to have a chamber dedicated to nail penetration tests, and there may not have enough equipment coming in. The lead times on new equipment are pretty long right now, and so just having an option for outsourcing some additional testing to meet your program goals. But yeah, it's a lot of not everyone knows how to do a tear down of a cell correctly, and just a lot of that expertise. You could build that up in house with personnel, equipment, facilities, but it's often just much more cost effective to outsource that with a partner.
Excellent. And to JC and Scott, we've covered a little bit here and there already about the kinds of things that a client should look for in a battery test partner. But I wonder if you could just kind of review at a high level what those key things are, and if there are any kind of questions that that organizations might not think to ask or might overlook that are really important in terms of identifying the right testing partner for them?
I guess to start it off, certainly capability and competence is a good start. You want to make sure that you're linking up with somebody that actually that knows what they're doing. I mean, we've all heard the phrase, "The world is full of amateurs." That's true. It's true in any industry. So you want to look for an organization that has the experience. A lot of times you can take a look at their accreditations. That's an easy first step. That's an accreditation basically means that an unbiased third party has come in and looked at their operations, their quality system, the way that they run testing, the equipment they have, how do they manage calibrations and corrective actions and the like. So yeah, that's a good place to start. Capacity is another one. It's great if they have a lot of competence and they have capabilities, but if they don't have enough of them, well, hey, you need testing now, not months from now. So that's kind of an important one to watch.
Let me interject.
Go ahead.
Can I inject in there just a second on the capacity thing? As long as we're talking about capacity, there's two aspects to that you want to look at. One, let's assume we're talking about cycling, for example. Number of cycling channels. It's not just what's the total number, but you also want to investigate what's the use of that in occasion. If a company has 1,000 test channels and 999 of them are used 100% of the time, there's not a lot of capacity there. So a little bit deeper dig into the capacity question is probably a good idea.
Excellent.
Efficiency. Does your lab run efficiently? Yeah, there's a few more here I can touch on. If the lab is running inefficiently, that usually is going to reflect on the service they provide you. Things may not, schedules may be missed. Data may, the details of data that should have been captured perhaps weren't captured. So yeah, how efficiency of the lab operations and willingness to invest in that. And so our partnership with Voltaic is a great example. It is very key here.
I was just about to go there with data delivery. How long? Okay, you've got your testing done, but how long is it going to take to get the data? What kind of tools do they have to deliver the data?
The days of typewritten reports, I think, are a little passé. So,
Excellent. Yeah, that sort of segues nicely into the next question. As this is a very dynamic industry, we at Voltaic, we've been around for over a decade. I know that, JC and the folks at Energy Assurance been around even longer, have even more experience. So you've seen a lot come and go in this industry. I'm wondering, as pertains to the service you provide, battery testing, how have you seen the needs of your customers and the demands of the marketplace change and evolve over the time that you've been involved, that you've been offering this external battery testing service?
We all live in the world of laptops, tablets, and smartphones, and we're so used to having we need a piece of information, swipe of the finger, a tap of the mouse, and we should have that answer. Well, our customers have similar expectations for us. It's not viable for us as a business to have a company come in and we tell them, yeah, we'll get to your project in 6 months. That's not going to happen. Or, yeah, we finished all the testing yesterday, but you won't see a report for 3 or 4 weeks. I mean, they have an expectation. They want to be able to see that data real time, and honestly, not just the data. They want actionable information, and so they rely on us and our partners to provide this data in a usable information format that they can take and go make decisions with.
What other technology does 99% of the population have in their hand 99% of the time and thinks about multiple times a day? What is my charge status? And that the thought of that happens more often every day that passes.
Indeed.
For vehicles, range anxiety there's a very lovely term. My gosh, do I have enough juice in the car? Am I going to make it home? Realities of our world.
Exactly. Yes, and preaching to the choir, we are at Voltaic, we're a mission-driven organization. Our mission is to help accelerate the transition to a battery-powered world. And so we feel all those things very deeply. Tal, I wonder, can you uh, um, layer in anything about what you've seen? We work with some companies directly and others with energy assurance, and how has this data access served, kind of a useful link between the different parties here um, for companies that are testing at an external lab?
Yeah, I think there's two broad categories. There's those who have the capabilities in house, and those who are entirely relying on external partners for tests. And I think let me start with the latter category, those who don't have internal testing. And so I think what we're starting to see now in the space, in both the consumer IoT devices and spaces like energy storage, is it was always surprising to me the deeper, the further we got in Voltaic, there was categories of customers that we always assumed would need Voltaic, but very quickly realized they're not actually testing their batteries. They're just, trusting a spec sheet and putting them into the device. And what we're seeing more is a greater appreciation that it's worth that extra check to really understand that battery, whether it's just for safety requirements, ensuring it'll meet your spec, or trying to better integrate that BMS and into your product and make it really integrated solution, not just a black box powering source and sink of energy powering your device. And so that's really been some of the evolution there. I think the energy storage space, again, when companies are relying on these things for multi-year warranties and delivering uninterrupted power to the grid, it still surprises me how little external testing is done or validation testing is done on energy storage systems to this day. But we're starting to actually see more now, so there's an evolution here. And then the other category of customer, the ones that have it in house, it's they have lots of facilities, they have some internal testing, but they have more programs increasing today. So we have teams who used to have 3, 4, 5 programs that are now running 20, and they need to qualify the batteries for all those programs all at the same time, and they can't do that all themselves. And sometimes it's energy assurance. Some of these customers are multinational, and they have testing they need in China as well. And so being able to pull that together from multiple facilities with their own data and make decisions with it in one place is really key. And so for those, it's really about bringing this data into their decision-making engineering fabric of their organization, so they can start looking at all this information all in one place, all in the same format, all in real time, without having to wait for those reports that they then need to go put into their system. Going back to the first category, just to run on the folks who don't do testing, for them it's really like, here's a template, here's what to look at, here's the capacity, energy, make it really easy for them in the software and the data delivery side to really know what to look at and see if there's any underlying issues in that data for their testing. So this is the first time they've done a lot of this, and they've seen a 300 cycle spec from a supplier. What does that actually look like with a capacity curve and an energy curve, and is there anything else that's weird in that battery? So it's really just making it easy and not complex for a lot of these new folks entering the space. Just make it really easy for them in terms of the user interaction to understand this data.
Interesting. I think that prompts another question I'd like to throw to our colleagues from EA. I'm curious, we've talked about how your service and the industry has evolved somewhat to where customers are expecting real-time data access, no longer content to wait 3 or 4 weeks for a report. So how has that changed how you provide this service to your customers and engage with them, in terms of like going from a report where presumably, you've got some templates or, based on whatever it was they came to you for testing, you kind of know how to present the results. Presumably they know how to interpret them. Does it change your engagement model with your customers when they have access to the data in real time, in terms of helping them understand what to look for, how that might change the ongoing interactions that you have with them when they have when they're able to see, effectively in real time, kind of what's going on with the cells on test in your lab? How do you engage with them to, ensure that they're getting what they need out of that data access and ultimately the testing you're providing?
There is a learning curve on the front, but it's not a huge learning curve. It's just really familiarity with software. The reality is that, like your platform, it's one that's fairly intuitive, and I think that's critical. If it was not intuitive, it wouldn't be a success. It wouldn't work out for our customers. I mean, the net effect of all that is that we see that the engagement has much more feedback to it. If you in the past you would take your product, ship it off to a lab. They would tell you it was going to take X number of weeks to accomplish it. Maybe somewhere in the middle, you might get an update, and then at the very end, here's a report. And that was kind of it. Now, with the customer being able to see their data, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, I mean, they're very in tune with that. It allows them to be more proactive on their end. It also, for us, it's kind of a double-edged sword. We gain a lot of efficiency because we're not having to constantly export data and send it out to them. Of course, they see this data all the time, so questions come up very quickly. So from a staffing standpoint, we've had to put more sort of front-end technical personnel to be able to help them with what they're seeing. So
I'll speak briefly to it from a sales perspective. We in a new conversation with a potential customer, the lab might share the tool of Voltaic, and that customer, the new potential customer, may not have heard of Voltaic, so they'll be in a learning phase, a learning curve. Oh, really? Oh, you can do that? Wow! And it becomes a selling point for the customer that's a new customer but's already familiar with Voltaic. It's always oh, that's great. That's something we really want. Glad that you have it. In both cases, it's a positive experience.
Part of my role as CTO is to look for differentiators for our business, and this has been a key differentiator. It's a service that customers want, and it quite honestly has helped us a lot with our business.
That's really interesting, John. I'm very intrigued by kind of the human side of the equation that you raised as your business evolves, putting that human battery expertise a bit closer to your customer, and evolving your staffing of your organization that way. I think we definitely see that as well. As this industry as batteries are becoming permeating more and more applications, becoming more integral. The expertise, the human expertise in the industry has not grown at the same rate in terms of people entering the industry with this expertise, that the overall size of the market. And so we absolutely see that human battery expertise is a premium. So it's very interesting to hear how you're augmenting your business not just with this technical capability, but that's driving some of the HR and staffing side of your business as well. That's fascinating. I'm wondering, can you share any fun anecdotes about things that your testing helped to facilitate? Any kind of game changers that you were able to provide your customers through your testing services?
You want to talk the pandemic example?
I'll take the first shot at this. Sure. Maybe not fun, but it was quite an experience. But it was in the height of the pandemic. There was a huge need. Everybody probably remembers the huge need and scare of ventilators. So there was a huge drive from bureaucracy and government authorities to get more ventilators on the market immediately. You remember the scare was there were going to be people lined up on the sidewalks dying because they couldn't there were no ventilators. So that trickled all the way down through the industry to the ventilator manufacturers, to the power supply, battery supply vendors, to the ventilator manufacturers, which trickled down to us. The details there were a 10-fold production in ventilators immediately. The ventilator manufacturers therefore needed a 10-fold resource in the power supply batteries. That exceeded the capabilities of the vendors of the batteries, so they had a second, third, fourth source. Well, the approvals weren't there. Medical approvals on the battery and the power supply were not existent. So very quickly we were brought in and said, this has to happen. It has to happen fast. It has to happen way faster than the norm. We used our relationships with the safety agencies to fast track the approvals of these new vendors to reach that tenfold in production, and did it in record time. There were articles written about it. There were case studies done. It was a very successful endeavor, and to me that speaks a little bit back towards that. What do you look for in a lab? A partner that's willing to say, yes, we'll take this on and we'll make it happen. Yeah.
Oh. We had another case where a supplier of a battery for a rather unique military product had went to another lab in a different country, and that lab had not fully utilized the standard in question, all the details of the standard to the degree that perhaps they should have. That left this company in a pinch. They were in a situation where either their product was either going to meet requirements, or they were going to have to totally stop and redesign the product. And to put this in perspective, this is a device that was actively in the hands of soldiers around the globe. So it was a very important piece of gear, truly a life-saving piece of gear, but it all came down to this tiny little battery that was inside it, whether or not it was going to ship or not. And we were able to work with them and utilize some perhaps less common aspects of the standard, not doing anything inappropriate, just utilizing what the standard offered. And their product met requirements, and they were able to ship, again, in record time.
Excellent. Tal, do you have anything to add?
Nothing comes to mind at this point, unfortunately.
Okay, got it. It looked like you might have had something to say. Excellent. So returning to the customer journey, how do you ensure that the relationship gets off to a good start, and that over the course of the testing relationship, that a good outcome is ensured for everybody, and that everyone's needs and expectations are met, kind of on both sides?
I guess the key starting point kind of goes back to what we were talking earlier at the people level, and this is really folks like Scott come into play here. It's about having that trust in your partner, and delivering on that trust both ways. When we go to execute a product, not execute a project, when we go to even quote a project, having a good bidirectional flow of information is critical. We look for things like, can you help us with a statement of work? I mean, if we don't know what you want to do, it's kind of hard for us to go tell you how we're going to do it. So having that starting point, even if it's just a rough draft, it kind of gives us both a basis to truly understand the need and make sure that we're delivering what you need as a result. From the execution phase, it's all about communications. Once the project makes it into the lab, being able to have that constant communication back and forth, whether that is in an automated fashion, so access through a system, or whether that's people communication, on things that perhaps don't fit that right now, that becomes critical, and that extends all the way through the reporting phase as well. I always tell people nobody likes surprises, and it's on both sides of the equation.
I think some details onto that kind of thing would be you want to develop that relationship with the outside test lab over time, so that you kind of know what each other are thinking, what each other are needing. Nobody's perfect, and there will be issues. I think a big thing in trust and in partnership is when there are issues, how are they dealt with? Are they hidden? And hopefully they won't notice this, and let's try to get or are they brought out as soon as possible, and let's deal with this. We deal with this today so we can move on. Some of the details that can be overlooked are things like custom fixturing. We need to know the shape of a product if we're going to put it on our vibration table. It's great that our customers that are long-term existing customers already know that our bolt patterns and our fixturing. Communications, SM bus, CAN bus, are these kind of issues that we need to talk about up front in the project so that on the day that we start, we aren't bringing up these surprises that are going to delay.
What do we need to charge and discharge a product? It seems so simple, but would amaze you how many times we get something in and we go to charge it and lo and behold, it just won't work. Oh, you forgot to tie pin 7 to ground. Well, you didn't tell us that. So those are things we need to know. Connectors, we've got to interface to your product. So a lot of times you're using proprietary, otherwise hard to get connectors. Well, we kind of need the mating connector. So things like that definitely help out, get the process going.
We usually have in a test lab, probably should usually have a kickoff meeting as well, where we've already gleaned this information. We're ready to start testing, but let's now all go over it together. Let's get all the stakeholders on the customer side and all the engineers and technicians that are going to be touching the project on the lab side. Let's all talk this project through and get to know each other.
Indeed, that's great. Yeah, it seems so obvious, but I can certainly imagine overlooking things like sending the right connector and somebody from your team having to make a last-minute trip to the electronics store or a rush order on DigiKey or what have you. I bet that's happened more than once.
Let me throw one last note on there. And again, this is I'm trying to talk down to anyone, but it's in that very obvious category. Now, this does not apply if you're doing something like a market sampling, you're going buying products off the shelf and you want to see what state they're in. But this is more if you're sending something to us for regulatory performance testing. Make sure it works. Check it before you send it. The same way you would check anything going out the door. Just make sure that these samples are actually viable. We see a lot of times we deal with companies that are in a very much a pre-production phase, perhaps even just a prototyping phase. There, it's very good. They may know their technology very well, but when it comes to assembling a cell or a battery pack or some other assembly, the details matter, particularly if we're going to do something abusive to it. So, yeah, do your homework before you put it in the box.
I'd love to hear, just for my own curiosity, I've been in some of these labs, but perhaps for people who aren't as familiar with the field, what are some of the types of abuse and failure testing that you do? You've mentioned a couple different things: nail penetration, vibration table, but what are all the tricks you have up your sleeve to try and get a battery to fail? Or for people that are unfamiliar, what are all the ways that you can abuse a battery in your test lab?
We are creative, so yes, if there's a way to break it, we'll find it for you. Happy to do that. The list is very long, quite honestly. It breaks down along the lines of perhaps electrical abuse. We're going to short circuit a battery, overcharge it, force discharge it, something to that effect. Mechanical abuse, as you were mentioning, so vibration, shock, drop, crush, impact. Thermal abuse. We're gonna take your product and put it in an oven and see how it behaves. This is a common test for cells, for instance. The others are not so much directly abuse as more. Well, just think of it as stress. If you're manufacturing a portable product, well, maybe it's not just going to be used in an office environment. Perhaps it's a power tool battery, and a contractor's going to have it out on a job site. So the temperature might be 20 degrees outside or 95 degrees outside. You may drop it from a ladder. How's it going to behave? So a lot of times it's sort of looking at that whole, what is the use case for the product and structuring the testing around it.
There's something else interesting within each abuse test. There's variety. Two that I can think of off the top of my head are the nail penetration, which is a very popular test these days. But there's different speeds or rates at which the nail is penetrated, and then does the nail come back out? Is there a speed or rate that it comes back out? The shape and diameter and shape of the point, everything there's many different standards of each of these tests that differ. The other one I can think of is the crush. Do we crush it over a round bar? Do we crush it within an angled receiver fixture? How is the crush done? A lot of different standards requirements and a lot of different, I guess, customer requirements. JC, I don't know if you want to go any more in depth than that.
One last one there is sort of an extreme on all of this. Part of what we do is actual thermal runaway testing. You know, lithium-ion batteries or lithium batteries in general are subject to thermal runaway. Thermal runaway in kind of in layman's terms is a case where something bad has happened to a cell and it is producing heat faster than it can get rid of it. Excuse me, faster than it can get rid of it. As a result, because the reaction inside that's causing this is heat driven, the faster you go, the faster the reaction goes. The faster the reaction goes, the more heat you produce. You get into this very ugly loop. Some of the standards we test to, such as RTCA standards for aerospace applications, require this testing. Other times it's just customers coming to us and they want to know how their product's going to behave. You know, if this is we've installed the battery into the device and it's charging on somebody's bedside table, or you know, is inside a particular tool or mounted in a vehicle. What's the effect? Do flames come shooting out of this thing? If so, where? What are the flames going to shoot onto? Is that something that's equally dangerous? How's it going to behave in shipping? You know, the way we package this thing. If it goes into thermal runaway, is the packaging going to contain it, or is it going to go outside and perhaps propagate to other nearby items? So knowledge is definitely power in this case.
Interesting. Thank you for that review. I'm just going to take the opportunity to cherry pick a question from our audience. Has the trend towards structural battery packs in electric vehicles flown through to your business at all in terms of the mechanical testing that you do?
Somewhat. So yeah, there's a lot of debate around, and for those that aren't familiar, structural battery packs basically means that you're eliminating a lot of the traditional structure in an electric vehicle pack. You're using the cells themselves and bonding or securing them together in such a way that they become the structure of the battery pack, and in some cases, the structure of the vehicle. There is still much debate around how well that's going to work out. It has very much advantages in terms of weight and volume because you're eliminating things. There are a lot of concerns sort of in the grand life cycle scheme because at some point you've got to recycle this thing, or is it really something that you can reuse in that case? The requirements for it, because the structural aspect is more on the vehicle level, sometimes this is more an impact at vehicle level testing as opposed to cell level testing. We still do the same cell level requirements, but you know, you can imagine if you have a vehicle that has one of these large batteries, it basically is to some degree the chassis of the vehicle now, and you put it on a 4-poster shaker and this thing is torquing and vibrating all over the place. How robust is that going to be? So it is done. It's just done at the sort of at the end device, or in this case, the vehicle level.
Yeah, it's one thing that's so fun and fascinating about being in this industry as things are changing so rapidly. It sort of reminds me or harkens back to a century ago at the earliest days of the combustion engine driven automotive industry, when everyone kind of had their own engine designs and different things like that. There's so much creativity going into all these different architectures and pack designs and things like that. It'll be really fascinating to see how things shake out as the industry matures a little bit. I'd like to, as we're nearing that, I'd like to just close talking a little bit about the relationship between Energy Assurance and Voltaic, since we've been working together for a few years. If you can help us understand, you know, just what motivated initially for you to bring Voltaic into your organization and as part of your service offering.
The true story there is that actually it's actually our largest customer that wrongly suggested that we adopt Voltaic. And it was very much a good thing. They were looking for that added efficiency. You know, how do we get access to our data? In their company, they actually have a team of battery analysts that are looking at the data that we're providing and doing things with that data / information. So us being able to provide data on a weekly basis just wasn't doing it for them. They needed a solution that had a more rapid, more constant inflow of data so that they could adjust what they were working on. And I'll leave it kind of at that. Once we had heard of Voltaic, didn't really know much about it, knew it was out there, but once we got into it, it was like, wow, this is neat. So we quickly, where it started off as just channels for that one particular customer that had mandated its use, we quickly actually expanded it to both of our facilities. And again, as I mentioned earlier in the discussion, it became very much a selling point, a differentiator for our services versus our competition. So that piece was great. Scott, did I miss anything there?
No, I think you nailed it.
There is
Awesome.
kind of a double-edged sword aspect to it, though, and that is that as our customers have access to data, 24 hours a day, my little pitch I use with customers is that if you sign on with us, you're going to have access to your cycler data. You could be anywhere in the world. You can be sitting on a beach in Fiji, and as long as you got a laptop and a Wi-Fi connection, you know what happened on my cyclers 40 minutes ago. I mean, it's that near real time. And a lot of them really take that to heart, apparently. They must really enjoy sifting through piles and piles of battery data, because we will get emails, at 2 o'clock in the morning where somebody was, I don't know, I guess the bar wasn't open. They decided to sit there in front of their computer. So, but it is sort of a double-edged sword. We've seen that increased feedback loop that I talked about earlier. It's very much there, but it's honestly, it keeps us on our toes, and it's very advantageous to the customer. So it's very worthwhile.
Absolutely. Yeah, it takes me back to, over a decade ago before we started Voltaic, when Paul and I were working in the same lab together, developing, commercializing some electrification technologies. And in our kind of precursor to Voltaic that we built for our lab at the university, Paul at the next desk, he basically always had about 100 different browser tabs open, looking at different cells on test using our earlier. And, here we are, over a decade later, here we are. And he's still got all those, still got that thirst for the data. So we can certainly understand that. So we just have a few short minutes left. I would summarize a lot of the audience questions as being about the specific capabilities of energy assurance in your test operation. I don't think we'll have time to go through them all here, but things like what types of, a detailed list of the types of testing and protocols that you offer, cell testing, pack testing, what kinds of equipment you have. So what is the best way for an interested party to follow up and find out more about your capabilities at energy assurance and begin that assessment of whether you'd be the right partner to work with them?
Yeah. I'd love to take that first step in relationship building. I'm very active on LinkedIn and invite any connections there. Reach out to me directly by email. Call me on my telephone. I can real quickly give a synopsis of who we are, what we do, and why we do it.
Those that will be attending the International Battery Show down in Florida, I think all 4 of us will be down there as well. So come by and find us. We'll have a booth down there under our new Element logo here. Whoops, sorry, wrong side. Element logo. Yep.
Excellent. And for anyone listening, if you're not going to be at the battery show, or you just like to hit reply in an email, you can just get in touch with us as the organizers of this webinar, and we will forward all of that to the partners at Energy Assurance. And of course, you can always find them online as well. So I think that just about does it. We're out of time, so we're going to wrap up the webinar. So again, I'd like to thank our panelists, JC, Scott, and Tal, as well as the audience for attending. The webinar will be available on our website on demand. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us directly. Again, if you're looking for an intro directly to our partners at EA and have trouble finding them on LinkedIn or online, send those our way and we'll forward them on. And thanks to everybody, and have a great rest of your day. All right.
Eli, Tal, thanks so much for the opportunity to
Thanks,
say
all.
hi. Appreciate it.
Excellent. Cheers.
Bye, guys.